Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Julie, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Really excited to dive into your coaching practice and talk about ADHD and neurodivergent attorneys, as well as any other topic that we can come up with. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'll start with this and tell me how many times you've heard this in your career. I definitely feel like I'm an adult with undiagnosed ADHD. It's 100% guaranteed in my family that I have it. My daughter is diagnosed with ADHD. She's been on medication. It's a godsend for her. I might have in my career snuck a pill here or there, and I'm like, oh wow, this is really great stuff, especially in college, right? Like when you're studying for exams.
Like, I can focus and I'm not distracted by everything.
That's 100%. But the flip side for me is I also feel, and for many people who are in like an ENTP, which is my Myers-Briggs, I'm an entrepreneur. It's also to some degree my superpower because it's in that chaos and that creativity, which I know people who are you familiar with personality types in Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think I'm an INFP.
Okay. Right. And there's so much components to that. And so I do want to we could start there and then we'll circle back to your career and your background and better understand like the story of ADHD and neurodivergence, because I really do want to learn more. But so my question to you is, how often have you heard an attorney or somebody else in your life say, oh yeah, I have undiagnosed ADHD? What do you say to that?
I hear that a lot. And it is so frequently like the parent whose child was recently diagnosed. That happened to me too. My daughter was diagnosed when she was 5, which was like 12 years ago. God, I have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old.
My daughter's 16. Yeah.
Okay.
Senior in high school. You too?
Yeah, it's insane. And I was like, gosh, all this stuff they're telling me is ADHD sounds so familiar. What's happening? And a bit like many women and men too, just flew under the radar by having a lot of coping mechanisms and being able to kind of get through white-knuckling it. But what I say to that usually is try to get a diagnosis. You don't have to go see like a neuropsych and do a full workup, although that's always great, because then you really know exactly what's going on. If you have a sensory thing, if it's this, it's that, but it can be really helpful to understand yourself, not even just to get medication. That can be helpful too, but just
totally.
Yeah.
It's interesting because two things. One, I will share with you afterwards, and I'm very proud of my daughter. She actually wrote a paper on how she had all these coping mechanisms for ADHD, actually as a student and as a girl, and how there's just certain things. And it was such a great paper. And she's actually going to be a psych major in college. And like, she's very interested and focused on it. Actually more recently, and she shares this publicly, so I'm not sharing anything she doesn't share, and she was recently also diagnosed with a mild case of dyslexia. And instead of being upset by that, she was so thrilled because she felt like there was something wrong with her, because even with the taking medication and going through that, it was so hard for her. And when she saw that, she just was able to like just take a break. And she was like telling everybody with happiness, I was diagnosed with this, because like I said, she felt like there was she didn't understand why she couldn't read in the right way. And then I was like, and she's like, Dad, you have it too. And because like I used to, when I was reading in school, in high school, I remember because I would have trouble reading, I would make up words to make people laugh as part of the joke. Yeah. But to some degree, like I say to my wife, I've made it this long. I don't think there's any value. This is my, like, for better or worse stand. And I think maybe a lot of people feel that way. I don't know.
I think so too. And I think we do have a lot of coping mechanisms usually when you get to our age, and it just can be helpful to understand, I think. And I see the ADHD and dyslexia so often. I was just talking to an attorney partner at a firm who has ADHD and dyslexia, and I see that a lot of litigators.
Yeah, it feels, at least in my world, every single person I talk to has it. Like, seriously, except my wife. She's a very clear she has clear focus. Like most people don't. And so let's start with that. I think that's where I think the challenge is, between the line of, we're in a world now where we're just all distracted every second. And it's really hard for anybody to focus for more than a minute with all that's coming at us. And because of that, and it seems clearly a lot more people are being diagnosed today than when we were kids for whatever reason, whether they're just searching for it more and other things like that. And so that's where I guess my first question to learn a little bit more from your training and where that, how have you learned what to, and of course there's a whole diagnostic test. So I think that's the answer, but just from a casual thing from somebody like thinking they might, and they don't want to necessarily invest in a test tomorrow. Yeah. What are some of the things that you have talked to about, like when attorneys, am I just like a typical distracted person with everything coming at me? Or do you think I have something more?
What I see is it's usually not one thing. It's not usually just issues with organization or distraction or procrastinating or estimating time for things. It's all of those things. Often communication is an issue too, because people with ADHD, we have a lot of feelings around stuff. So often we'll forget too. So we have issues with communicating with people. So I usually see this like perfect storm of issues. I think it's also the severity, right? Is this really impacting your day to day? If it's not, you might have a mild case, but does it really matter if it's not impacting you?
And again, I'm like I said, I promised you before we started, I was going to go in no particular order, but like to me, I think one of the things that I think about with taking medication or pills, there's in so many different types now, and you have to keep testing to make sure it's the right fit for you and keep working with somebody. What I say is, what is the exit ramp for that? Because one of my struggles is it's for school, so you can focus in school, but potentially if you have the career that fits your energy and where you want to focus, you may or may not need it as much. But I think, like, how do you go about that when someone has ADHD? Is it like start taking it and then checking every year? Or is it usually, okay, you shouldn't be taking any medication for longer than a certain period of time because you want to start working on there's a therapist who helps you organize your time and structure. I forget the name of that right now, but work with somebody to help you be more focused. See, you could tell I have ADHD.
It's okay. It's okay. I do too. So I should have noticed.
But how do you think about medication in terms of time frame? Is there usually an off ramp? Was my question.
I think people can compare it to like being diabetic, right? And having something like a chemical deficit. I mean, they talk about that with antidepressants too. So I think sometimes it's something that you might just need to be on for a long time, but I don't think it's ever a bad idea to take a break and see like, how am I? Do I have more coping mechanisms than I used to? It can also be a way to get like a little bit of a break from the symptoms so that you can develop coping mechanisms. Sometimes if you're in the midst of it and everything just is overwhelming, it's really hard to start implementing like routines and do stuff like that. So I think it can be hand in hand. And then, okay, now I've got some coping mechanisms, maybe I'll taper down.
Let me ask a basic question. What is ADHD? Is it a chemical thing or is it what is the issue, and does it depend on the person?
It is a neurological issue. There are like chemical differences. For example, the way that people with ADHD process dopamine is very different. We immediately, we get immediate like high off of it and it goes down immediately too. Whereas a neurotypical person will get a high off of it and it lasts for a long time. So that's one reason we're constantly seeking.
So say that one more time, because if you have ADHD, you go high really fast and low really fast. Is that?
Yeah, it's like instead of a gradual and then like up.
Got it.
And then we're constantly craving that dopamine, which is why people get into like impulse control issues or like addicted to their phone or things like that, because they're craving the dopamine. So there is definitely a chemical difference. And they also see, like when they do brain scans, they see neurological differences in the way the brain works. So it's a real physical thing.
Where does the focus component fit in? The lack of focus component fit into that, like with the dopamine? Is that connected?
I would think so. I'm not an expert on that. Like I'm not a scientist, sadly. But yeah, I think that it's hard to focus when you're constantly seeking new dopamine, right? And also you're not getting dopamine hit and then having it stay there so that you can remain focused on something.
Another basic question that I probably should have asked ChatGPT, but it's more fun to ask you. Is it nature versus nurture? For some people, are they born with it? For some people, do they develop it based on environmental factors? What is the current understanding?
It's genetic. I think it's pretty much all genetic. I think there's things that will make it more have it like pop out sooner or make it more of an issue. And that's why we see so often people whose kids are diagnosed. We're like, oh wow, that's me. And then they get diagnosed and they're like, my dad was always funny about that stuff. And it's like, yeah, he had ADHD too, or autism, or some other type of neurodiversity.
So like I don't know if you have the answer to this, but what percentage of the population is considered to have it either diagnosed or not diagnosed? Because honestly, like my struggle with it feels like it feels like 80% of like people I know say they either have it undiagnosed or diagnosed. And that's my challenge, like concern. That's where I think it's challenging, where it's like, it feels like everybody says they have it now. I don't know if you're feeling that way too, and from your side, but do you know what the scientific or what people are saying? It feels like at least half the population from what I'm looking at.
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I know at one point it was like 5%, and now it seems to be growing. What's interesting too is like in populations, lawyers, the 2016 Betty Ford Hazelden study that the ABA did found that 12% of attorneys self-identified with ADHD, and that was in 2016. So you can imagine it's probably a lot more now. And that's just self-identifying. That's like they know they have it. That's not like you saying, hey, this partner is.
Yeah.
And then the more recent Bloomberg study of law students found that 25% of them identify as neurodivergent.
And when you say neurodivergent, what other things would you include in that?
Dyslexia. There's no set formula
Sure,
for what's
sure.
neurodivergent. There's different views on it. Like some people don't include things that are like acquired differences, like through brain injury. I would include that, but typically it's kind of like autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, the DISs, Tourette's, ADHD. I might be missing one. That's kind of like toxic.
Does DIS stand for something? I don't know if you know it.
Yeah, so DIS is like an issue. So like dyslexia,
Okay. Got it.
Issue with reading, dyspraxia is physical movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before, one good way to self-diagnose or just get a sense is like if you need the highs and lows, right? Like you get really high quick, you get that emotion. Is there anything else to think about, just where I could determine, okay, it's hard for me to focus, like I get distracted a lot, I get lazy a lot or whatever, versus, okay, this is something more than just that?
Yeah. There's a lot of online tests, the attitude and chat, like all of them if you Google online self-assessment for ADHD, I think that gives you a good start. But like I said, it's usually not just one thing. It's not like I just can't focus when I'm doing this thing. It's more, no, I really can't focus when I'm doing this. And this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And to your point, what you said is, when it gets to the point where you feel like you can't do your day-to-day job or whatever you're supposed to be doing, and it's interfering with how you live, that's when it probably rises to the level. So let's talk about lawyers, right? So you have your practice is called Amicus Coaching, which I love the name. Very cool. Very good play on words. Well, it's such a great play, right? And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you specialize in coaching attorneys who are neurodivergent and or specifically with ADHD, correct?
Yes, I do like to do the neurodivergent because I get a lot of people with autism, a lot of ADHD and
yeah.
I have someone with dyspraxia, which was a first for me. It was really interesting. That's the difficulties with physical movement and coordination. But
What's the term?
Dyspraxia.
Okay.
And he also has ADHD. So many of these things go hand in hand. And I don't want people to think that I can't help them if they're on the autism spectrum. Like I can only help them if they have ADHD. I can definitely work with people who have any kind of neurodivergence, because so much of it is executive function issues, really getting people to be able to get those coping skills, and which overlaps so much between different types of neurodivergence.
Right. And the coping skills. And who helps people with coping skills besides coaches? Like, what's the type of coaches? What? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, I'll have to think about the name my daughter was working with, but it was like, for example, helping her like organize her schedule for the week, like those, which the challenge is you need to be focused enough to be able to do that. And one of the things I see with my daughter is everything just takes her a lot longer. She never feels like she has enough time. And she always gets very stressed over that. With that said, she works so hard. She got into her first school of choice. It was like, she's the first one in her entire high school to get into college. And because she applied super early, and like, she's so proud of her to work so hard to get there. So how does an attorney can you take us through, I don't know, like a case study or something like that of what it's attorney who you've worked with, what is the situation? How does attorneys cope or come to you with ADHD, and what are some of the things that you've helped them with? So the purpose being somebody who's listening to this, who may be able to hear some of the things that you're saying. Oh, I can relate to a lot of that. Maybe I should look into either getting tested on an online test or something like that else.
Yeah. And I think the broader term for this kind of coaching is executive function coaching.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So let me think of a case study. I have someone right now who's really proud of her. I've been working with her for over a year. And she really struggled with all of the things: the organization, responsiveness, communication, getting her time in. That's a huge thing for people.
Totally. You're right.
It's hard for all of us. And you have ADHD, it's like impossible. Prioritization, forgetting things, all of that stuff. And we put a lot of things into place. And I try to do one thing at a time, because otherwise it's like I come in and I'm like, I have all these ideas. Oh my God. And then they're like,
yeah.
So one thing that's really important is routines. So having a lot of people who are neurotypical, and you may not know this because you may not be neurotypical, but will go start their day and they have a routine before they dive into stuff, where they maybe check their calendar and update their to-do list and prioritize some things and add some stuff to their calendar. Most of us who are neurodivergent will just sit down and start emailing, because we're like, oh my God, I'm behind already. And it's like pinging and it's right in our face. So creating like morning, afternoon, and evening routines can be really helpful.
So what I do, because you need it. I have a really great, you can't see it so well, but it's a calendar, daily calendar that has your schedule for the day, yes, has your top 3 things. Then it has a further to-do list. Then it has a notes thing. And then it has what you're grateful for. And then what you're focusing on tonight, or what. And so like that type of thing is needed, because if not, and I need to wake up an hour or 2 earlier to do journaling and writing and content, because that's how I get set. If I don't do those 2 things, my day is shot. It's unfortunate, but it is. I don't know. Yeah.
It's really interesting, because I struggle so much with attorneys I work with, because they're so busy and they don't have time for that kind of stuff. But as you said, if you don't do that stuff, then your day is so much harder, and usually you're not as productive. And so I don't have time to exercise, because I've got my kids and my partner and everything's going on, and I'm in trial and blah, blah, blah. But if you take 15 minutes to exercise, you're going to be more focused. So you're going to get more done, and it's going to be more efficient. So it's not thinking of it as like a zero-sum game, but more as like additive.
Is billing the number one challenge that you find your clients have, or what are the top couple things the themes that you see?
Yeah, like billing and timekeeping, and then getting out the billing part, the administrative stuff, is usually why they come to me, because it's easy for the firm to see if you're constantly on that list of people who haven't done their time, and it makes the firms crazy because they're just like, oh my God. Or if you miss doing a pre-bill and things don't get put onto it, and then the client's upset. So that's really one of the biggest things. And then definitely communication comes in. It's like, hey, this person just doesn't respond. We don't know what they're doing all day. They're taking too long on stuff. They're doing everything at the last minute. Like that kind of stuff is super common.
I mentioned Myers-Briggs before. Is there any kind of when a client comes to you, normally are they not diagnosed yet? An attorney, or is it somebody who's been diagnosed? And I assume if someone's being diagnosed, they already are on some sort of plan or path, or working with some sort of psychiatrist, I think it would be for the right? For medication.
Psychologist.
Yeah, psychologist too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So is most people still trying to determine where they're at when you work with them?
I would say it's a mix, honestly. A lot of people come to me because they've hit a wall. So they had really great coping mechanisms maybe throughout school, because they had so many years of school, they figured it out. Obviously they did well because they passed the bar and they graduated and all of that. But then they get to practice of law and it's very different. And that's where things start to fall apart. So I find it at different pressure points. Like when you start practicing law, sometimes if you shift to being mid-level supervising juniors, it gets overwhelming. I had someone once who he just had a to-do list in his head until he became a 7th year. And then it was he had too much and it just fell apart. But he was so smart, he could just keep it all in his head. and he didn't have the skill of like how to do it,
Organizing it down. Yeah.
organizing it down. So yeah, so that's, and then I get a lot of partners who are either newly diagnosed because their kids were, or again, the administrative pressures of partnership and the business development and everything. It's like they don't just have to bill anymore. They
Yeah.
have so much more to do, and their like coping mechanisms just aren't really working anymore.
And when someone gets diagnosed, as I guess example in my daughter's and cases, it's through conversations and answering questions and going through clinical diagnosis. They're not, there's no other, it's right. It's an observation and learning from somebody. It's not like there's no blood test you can take or something like that.
No, sadly, no. I think there is a lot of research on brain scans. I think they probably could do a brain scan, but nobody's going to do a brain scan to start with. They're going to start with regular diagnostic criteria and talking to a person.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a computer test too, where it measures your attention. They did this with my daughter when she was 5, and it was basically like clicking like a space bar at certain, like when certain things flashed up, and it was like how long it took, and like especially when things switched, like how long it took for her to switch. So that was really interesting to me, because I like, that seems very scientific.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't know if they still do that. That was like 12 years ago. So just caveat.
Clearly there's more people being diagnosed today than 10 years ago, than 20 years ago, than 30 years ago. What are some of the reasons that they say that's the case?
I think education. People are learning. It used to be like, it was the typical little boy with ADHD who can't sit still and is getting in trouble all the time, was what people thought it was. And then now we're learning it looks so different in girls. Girls are often inattentive, and girls are also socialized to not act out. So they're not necessarily going to run around the classroom. Although I did have one of my close friends in college would literally run around her classroom in elementary school, and they would ask her questions and she would call up the answer as she was writing. She had ADHD, and she was super smart, but she couldn't sit still. So yeah, I think it's just figuring out like that there's more to it than we originally thought in terms of what does this look like in other people and other populations.
And certainly, like you said, whether if it is nature, right, versus nurture, certainly having so much the technology that's available, it makes it so much more apparent in today's, where maybe 20 years ago it wasn't as like when you're not having 17 different things happening all at once. And certainly social media is a travesty for students and kids right now, unfortunately. So it doesn't help the situation. And that's where, I guess, do you find that there's a lot of, and maybe you don't because you don't go in those circles, a lot of like misconceptions about ADHD that you feel like you have to defend yourself? Because even if I'm going to be like vulnerable for a second and transparent, even with me being like self-diagnosed and my daughter being diagnosed and I see the impact, I still feel like a lot of people say it and there's just a lot of people saying it and mixed diagnosis, and it's like muddies the water for everybody in a way where everyone's and the answer is toughen up, just focus more. I don't know. I'm curious if you that's a big thing you deal with when you say what you do.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of misconceptions around it. I actually was talking to a friend who's a therapist, but who doesn't know that much about ADHD. And she was like, how can you have ADHD? You went to law school, you passed the bar, and you were successful. And there is that misconception, like you can't be successful, or you can't, like, especially like in a high pressure job, like being a lawyer, if you have ADHD. So there's a lot of misconceptions around it, a lot of misinformation, and it makes it hard because then people don't want to disclose.
Let's go down that route. So you went to law school, you practiced as an attorney, and you said that it was when your daughter got diagnosed at 5 years old, where like there was a light bulb. Can you take us through that? Because that's probably something that, like I said, I could relate to and seeing that, but maybe others can relate to, but the light bulb hasn't hit for them yet.
Yeah. And I think it's just so often we just take for granted the way that we are. We're like, that's just the way it is. And often, and because it's so genetic too, it'll often be like, that's the way everyone in my family is, which is funny. But yeah, so for me, like school was never like that hard for me. And that sounds really.
No, it doesn't. It sounds like some people it's just not hard.
So school was okay. I struggled more when I got to the practice and had things that were like, didn't have a long deadline. or had a long deadline and weren't urgent. Like that kind of stuff was always difficult, or I was not interested in. Boredom is like the kiss of death when you have ADHD. People, you just can't do it. But yeah, having my daughter get diagnosed, they were like, oh, she's having a hard time. It was like a lot of sitting still and focusing, and I could just see it in her. And it just reminded me like how I was as a kid. And that was just like started me thinking like maybe this is something that I have, and maybe this is why I can't focus in certain environments, or I forget stuff. I had a day where I didn't take my ADHD medication, which I take, which was great. And I went to the airport and I literally lost my scarf, lost my boarding pass. I had a paper one, bizarrely, and forgot my Starbucks at Starbucks. And I was just like, oh my God, this is my life without medication. It's just like I'm drifting through, making a mess of things. But it was all fine. I went back, I found my scarf, luckily, and like they printed me another boarding pass. I found my Starbucks. But that's like being able to not live my life that way.
Yeah.
Is really cute.
I was smiling when you were saying that because I'm like, that's like my daughter to the T. Like one of the things that stood out was interesting is like she just like never knows the right direction in even her own neighborhood, and it's just like it's very hard to understand that. But on the flip side, she's like amazing at being empathetic, and she actually just wrote. She wrote for a college essay I read. It was really impactful. She's very hyper aware, and she said, and which has been maybe part of the thing, but like what the superpower of that is, she's very empathetic to people who are in like tough situations, and that's why she's really good at being a counselor and doing volunteer with younger kids, and why she wants to be a psychologist. Layla, if you ever watch this, I'm really talking. Hopefully, this will be good. She'll shoot, but she will never sit down and watch this. So I would, unfortunately, maybe someday. Are you then? I assume you took an evaluation with somebody and you were diagnosed. Take us through from that to now to actually becoming and starting a practice and coaching others? How long a period of time was when you got diagnosed to when you started coaching others?
That is a really good question. So let's see, I've been coaching for about 15 years, but I started off working at University of San Diego School of Law in the Career Services Office.
Okay.
Attorneys and with recent grads mostly. So that's where I started coaching, like more career coaching kind of stuff. And then I moved to the consulting side and was working at doing career coaching and also like executive coaching. And I just kept seeing people coming to me for like executive coaching for like time management and organization and blah, blah, blah. And I would be like, yeah, I have ADHD, just because I suspected, or I'd mention somebody in the news or something. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD. I haven't told anybody. And I was like, or I'm on the spectrum, or I have dyslexia. I haven't told anybody. And it's like, yeah, I can see that's what's causing these issues. And so it got me really interested in how to help.
Wait, they actually were diagnosed, but they haven't told anyone, you meant, or they think they have? Okay, got
Usually it was they'd been diagnosed.
And they were diagnosed and they were in school and hadn't told anyone.
So this was after that when I
got it. Because that makes more, because in school you certainly want to tell everybody because you get more time on tests and you get more accommodations and things like that. Yeah. Got it. So they were practicing and they hadn't told anyone.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, maybe I should
and I was
help them.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just also like, how helpful would it have been for me to know this when I was practicing law? It would have been huge to know that and to have ways to cope with it. So I wasn't just floundering. So that's where I got interested in. I did some training with this wonderful woman,
Carol Goodenough.
Yeah, she's unfortunately passed away. It was lovely though.
How do you pronounce her last name? I'm sorry, I think I butchered it. Okay. Yeah, and she wrote the book, Your Innovator Brain, The Truth About ADHD. Can you tell us a little bit? I love this part of like when you were trained and when you learned about that. I would love to learn more about what's in that. What were some of the takeaways from that book?
So her perspective is definitely like, you can get it from the title, that there are huge strengths to having ADHD. You can be innovative, you can be an entrepreneur, you're creative. Everyone I work with who has ADHD, pretty much everyone I work with who is neurodivergent, has a creative side. That's just, I have musicians, I have artists, like they're lawyers, but like in their spare time, they have a serious creative practice going on. So that was her big push, was just like, not only finding ways to cope with the hard parts, but recognize where you're strong so you can lean into that. If you're really good at generating ideas, I have person I'm working with who is amazing at generating ideas. She has ADHD, and one of her partners does not have ADHD, but she hones them down and figures out what they're going to do. So it's like amazing synergy.
That's the part where, like, for me is like the challenging part, because but again, I think, again, I'm going to like then remember what you said earlier. Is it interfering with your day to day? Like, to your point, if you're not on medication, you're walking, you get lost in an airport, or you don't know where the things is, or do you have times where you're not as focused as you want to be? But if you like spend a half hour and you like make a list, you're able to do it. And maybe you still, if you took pills and you did that, you would actually be X times better, but maybe not. Maybe you don't want to take pills, but you're able to get through the day. And I think that to me is my number one takeaway so far. And even though I knew that, and it's an obvious thing, I think it's important to reinforce, because, and as my daughter would say, like, there's so many things that she couldn't, like, it was interfering with her day to day. The other thing that I think about is, maybe you hear this, you're like, I wish they could be in a different profession. I wish they could be somewhere where it made sense for the creative side, that passion side, to have a career, and where they're, and maybe not, maybe that's not the case, because maybe if they're doing that full time, they'll have similar challenges. But I don't know. Do you ever feel that way? Sometimes people are just in the wrong line of work.
And occasionally, often though, they really have these crazy strengths where they're like, they have people who are just like amazing brief writers. Like, they just can write a brief like nobody's business about anything. And that's the hyper focus. They get into it and they're interested, and they kill it. So there's a lot of, or litigators who just get really excited and into trial and deposition, and it feeds that thing for them. So I think there's hard parts about it, but it also can be really good for people with ADHD, because it's like the law is constantly changing, right? It's usually not static, and it can be really interesting. And so I think often more it's like finding the right practice, or the right way to practice.
For sure. And, or like finding like, for me, it's always finding the time in the day where I can get into the flow state, which is usually in the morning. And 9 to 5, it's really hard to get there, and especially when things are coming at you. Yeah. You trained after law school to become. So what were you training for? What was your, like, when you were working with Carol? Thank you. How long were you training with her? Did you do any other training after that? I would just love to understand that.
So I first trained with CTI, which is a coaches training institute. I think it's
one
of the oldest like coaching training programs in the country. And I did that first just for general coaching training.
Was that experience?
It was good. It was interesting. CTI was created by actors. So
interesting.
There's a little bit of that vibe to it. So when you're working with like attorneys, it's a little different. You can't be quite, let's take the perspective of Stripes. You're going to be like, what are you talking about? But it was really good. I mean, it definitely opened my mind to like ways to work with people and how to coach people and how to, I don't know, really tune in and see what people need.
Did you need to log a certain amount of hours to get certified?
Yes.
Okay.
So you do. And let's see. So Carol, I worked with her, I think 6 months. We met and she gave me like handouts and like a book and like all this. I read everything, and then we would go through and discuss like the tools and how to use them. There's a million tools out there. So figuring out like on how to help someone who has ADHD or is neurodivergent. And then we would do practice sessions where I would coach her.
Amazing.
Yeah, which was great.
And then from there, any other ongoing training that you do? Is there continuing education that you need to do for this, or how does that work?
There isn't anything required, but I just did an ADHD group coaching training to come up with group coaching for people with ADHD, because I'm really interested in that. I find so many of my people be at the same law firm and they don't know the other person. And certainly not that they also have ADHD or neurodivergent, and they'll have the same exact issues. And they're so isolated often because attorneys don't talk about things that are hard, that are what they're struggling with. I'm doing great. I'm on top of it. That would really help the isolation. I'm just trying to figure out the nitty gritty of it at this.
I was going to ask, have you done group coaching yet or not yet?
Not for ADHD.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I'm curious, any takeaways from how to do that differently with a group with ADHD to make it work? What was your nuggets that you walked away with?
So So I think it's having the right people, and the right number is important.
Okay.
Because,
6?
I was thinking like 5.
Okay.
But yeah, like maybe
Close.
6.
I was
It's
close.
kind of all having people who want to be there. I don't want them to be like assigned by their firm.
Yeah.
Choose it so that they're and want to share with other people. Because if they're not open to sharing, there's no point in doing
Yeah.
the group coaching. And also people who aren't going to talk over each other too much.
Yeah.
We all do when we have ADHD, but people who are going to listen as well. So it's like sussing out like the individual.
Why does that happen when you have ADHD?
It's impulse control. And also we think really fast. So we finish other people's sentences frequently. I do that all the time. Oh my God, I need to stop doing that. It's ridiculous. I probably did it today. Like I didn't even notice.
No, you did. I'm just laughing at my daughter. Sorry. It's like hearing, and I know all this, but it's like sometimes you need to hear it from different perspectives. Can I ask, and if you don't, how your daughter's doing now? Like it's been a long time. How has her journey been?
She's doing really well. She's a senior. It's amazing how far she's come from when she was a little kid and was really struggling. It was really hard at first, but she's amazing. She's super bright, and she's at a school for kids who are neurodivergent, which has been really helpful because
for sure.
Like, teach in a way that makes sense to her and like in multiple modalities and things like that. So she's doing great. She's awesome. Yeah. My older daughter also has ADHD, but she wasn't diagnosed till she was 18, which was an ADHD.
Oh, wow.
Mom fail. She had a million coping mechanisms, and I didn't she's never late. I don't think she's ever been late in her life unless she was like in a car.
Well, this is interesting. So you said she was never late. Okay. I think this is a really important point because what does that mean? She has a million coping mechanisms. Like, cause I think other people, like including me, right? We might have a million coping mechanisms, but not understand what that means. So what are anything else? So she wasn't late. That's good. But what was the coping mechanism about that?
She sets alarms for everything. So she sets an alarm to get up. She sets an alarm for when she should be finishing breakfast and for when she should be out the door. And she follows them. She's okay. I'm doing the next thing. She also sets time limits for herself on like YouTube and TikTok and stuff.
Okay.
And again, follows it. Like she'll have a 30-minute time limit and it wakes her up from her kind of that stupor we're in of scrolling. So the fact that she can do that, a lot of people with ADHD can't do that. Like they'll just keep clicking. She's always been very good at school. So but we realized as we were talking, like one of the things that happens for her is she's really good at in-class stuff because it's pressure and urgent. So if she has like an in-class essay, she would do great. If she had an out-of-class essay, she would do one draft and then be bored with it. And so that was the ADHD. I was like, oh, I totally understand it, but it wasn't something I was seeing. I needed to dig a little bit more to figure it out.
But to the point of like where it had to be diagnosed, whether your daughter or somebody else, because you said she has a million coping mechanisms, was there underlying like realizing that they're in like she or somebody else is in pain every day because they're like mental pain because of all the coping mechanisms they have to do? It's almost suffocating in a way. And by being diagnosed, it allows them to let go a little bit. Is that why you'd want to? Because to me, like, what is it? Right? What's the difference between a coping mechanism and just like organizing your day?
I think coping mechanisms, like organizing your day for neurotypical, just comes naturally. Coping mechanisms are more like something you have to learn and really work on implementing.
I think it's hard for me because I have all those problems. Like when I talk to my wife about it, I'm like, yeah, everybody struggles with these things. She's like, no, I don't. I'm like,
no,
oh.
I know. That's exactly right. Like we all think, oh, everyone.
Yeah. But also, and then everybody loves public speaking. She's like, oh, I fucking hate it. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. That's interesting. I interrupted my own thoughts. See there, but again, to me, I have no sympathy for myself, honestly, about any of that. Cause I'm like, I don't know, for whatever it's worth. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you try to do a lot of things. You interrupt your thoughts. My question now, it came back to me was, because there's executive functioning and there's medication.
Right.
Is there a line of coaching where it's okay, people don't want to take medication and they want to just be able to do it through executive functioning? And is that success? Is that able, even if it's like a severe case, can that be done if somebody's dedicated to really working hard with that?
I think so. Like my older daughter is not on medication for ADHD, and she's, again, just learned coping mechanisms mostly herself, but you can be taught coping mechanisms too. There's no requirement to take medication, or everyone's so different. For some people, it's going to be life-changing. For some people, it's hard to find the right one.
That's for sure. There's always side effects, whether stomach issues or other things.
Yeah. So if you can get away with not taking medication, I think that's great. Not everybody can.
And with the purpose to being diagnosed, like for your daughter, an example at 18 was just to know and be able to use that to help, I don't know, just be more informed for the things.
I think she understands herself better, and also doesn't beat up on herself as much. Like, why can't I do this thing? Like, why everyone else is doing this thing? Why is this hard for me? No, this is hard for me. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
The way to be more gentle with yourself if you understand why you're struggling.
Is there a chance, and maybe I'm looking too into it, like where somebody, because a lot of it's through interviews and questioning and answering, where you can be answering questions the way you think it should be answered, or the way you wish you were, or the way that where you can just get diagnosed wrong because you're almost even filtering what you're saying. Like, for example, when I'm like, oh, no, it's normal, it's fine. And you're just not really getting into that. And is that something, it's not infallible. So I'm just curious, like how that works.
So one thing, especially when diagnosing kids, they typically have a 3-part questionnaire. Sometimes they'll have the kid do it, they'll have the parents do it, and have a teacher do it. So, and the same thing with adults, usually they'll have your significant other do one.
Yeah.
So it gives you a better picture where you want
totally.
This is normal. Like,
you can lie, but your spouse will not lie. A spouse will tell you exactly what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think also good psychiatrists will ask probing questions.
About
those things. If you're like, oh, you say that this is fine, but what does that mean? And like, why is it fine?
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to switch topics away from this for you helping me diagnose myself and ask you just a couple more questions, and I'll let you get to lunch. One of the questions that I love to ask is books that have been impactful for you in your life, in your career, whether books you've read more recently. And one of the reasons I ask is we have an online database that's searchable, that every book that a guest mentions will be featured on there and what you said about it. And sometimes people bring out a Kindle or they look at their Audible list, but I didn't know if anything stood out to you.
So I love ADHD 2.0. It's I'm looking at somebody else. Edward Hallowell and John Rady. And it's a very positive but informative take on ADHD. It's short, which is nice when you have ADHD. I think that's always something I always ask people who are newly diagnosed to read, because it gives them a better idea of what's going on with their brain and like the good parts of it too. Another one I really like is How to Keep House While Drowning. And
How to say again?
How to Keep House While Drowning, and that's by Casey Davis.
Are you saying how to keep house while drowning?
While drowning, yeah.
Tell me.
So she has ADHD, and her whole thing is like taking morality out of housework and like care tasks. So I think especially women, but we all kind of have a moral, like if my house is messy, I'm a bad person. And she tries to divorce those two concepts. So it's, no, your house is just messy. And she has a lot of really good concepts, like doing a reset. Instead of, I have to clean my kitchen, I'm going to reset my kitchen back to where it should be. That kind of stuff. It's short. The audiobook is like 2 hours, I think. And again, it's also designed for people with ADHD. So it's like nuggets.
I'm going to read that one. It's interesting because I'm guilty of going on vacation, coming back, and then just not unpacking my suitcase for a while. And I read about it, and it's really interesting. People with ADHD is like, there's no dopamine to unpacking after a trip. There's nothing there. And I could just like with that, or you can have like piles of things where you just don't see it anymore. Like it's just not there. And it's just so interesting. And then like in 2 weeks, you get, let me clean that up and just do a big organization day. And it was I just found that interesting. You go to any teenage girl's room, you know what you're in for, but yeah. And again, that's why there's a lot of things that are in general similar. Okay. Those are two. I'm definitely going to take a look at that book. Anything. And again, if nothing comes to mind, that's fine. Anything non-ADHD that stood out to you at any point in your life that was a good book that you, and if not, that's fine. These are two good ones. So I'll keep pushing until I got nothing else.
Actually, the other one, it's not like of course, it's another like neurodiversity one that I just bought this series, and it's like a picture book. So it's for kids, but it's for families too. And it includes like 3 different ones. One is all cats are on the autism spectrum.
All cats are on the autism spectrum. Okay.
And it has pictures of cats and like a little explanation, and it helps people understand what it is and why it's like people are not trying to be different or whatever. And then they have all owls have anxiety, which it's just hilarious too. The pictures
Okay.
are so funny.
Love
And
it.
so it's entertaining. And then they have all dogs have ADHD.
That's true.
And it's really helpful because I think sometimes like explaining to family members can be hard, explaining to siblings can be hard.
Yeah.
And having something where it's like fun and silly can be really helpful.
I love it. Thank you. No, totally. And fun, funny, simple, and easy to understand the concepts.
Yeah.
So my last question would be, after everything that we've talked about and after me grilling you about ADHD in all different ways, is there anything that we didn't talk about that, or you don't get to talk about as much when it comes to what you do and your career growth, that you would love to talk about a little bit more, that I give you the floor to kind of share, like, here, like, what, this is something I just never get to talk about when it comes to ADHD or my growth journey?
That's a really good question. I feel like I talk about so much.
Yeah, totally. And it might not be. I just wanted to make, if it doesn't come top of mind, then it's not, you don't have to search for it. But sometimes there's somebody's, oh yes, you didn't actually ask me about this. And so I just wanted to make sure I covered everything that you felt did justice to what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, I think so. I would like to reiterate that I don't just focus on ADHD.
Yes.
I really want to be helpful to people who are neurodiverse in all ways. And another thing too that's important is a lot of firms are like, well, if someone doesn't tell me they have ADHD, how do I send them to you? And honestly, if you think someone does, send them to me. I can work on executive function stuff. And it doesn't really matter so much that they don't have a diagnosis. What matters is what are the issues, and can I help with those things? And often they'll end up just telling me that they have a diagnosis.
And to that point, that's the fear of sharing that with your firm, because what will be the consequences, if at all, or is it the right culture? And of course, more often than not, you wouldn't want to be in an environment where they're like, sorry, it's not the right fit. You get everything done. So yeah, totally appreciate that. I appreciate you for sharing not only like what you've learned, but your family's journey and your journey. And I will definitely share this with my wife and my daughter when she's ready to take the time, maybe when she has some time out on the weekend or after school's done, to appreciate this. I will also share with you afterwards. I'll email you the essay that she wrote, because I think you would appreciate it.
I would love to see that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if she ever wants to chat, like I'm always happy to chat with people.
Okay.
Like I don't charge people for that. And also parents,
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. I think she would love that at some point. So thank you so much. And thank you for, if you're like me, or if you just, this has brought questions to you and you want to reach out to Julie, I will for sure have her LinkedIn on this. Is there any other way you would want someone to reach out to you? Just go to your website.
My email is just julie@amicuscoaching.com. And I'm like always happy to talk to people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you for staying on this long.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.